You're listening to Milwaukee Mafia, your podcast dose of Wisconsin Mafia and true crime history.
Hey, Milwaukee Mafia Patreon members, we're back with another episode. I'm Eric.
I'm Gavin.
Gavin, we got a question for you here.
Sweet.
And this question, I'm going to read it exactly as it's written, so it might sound a little weird.
Sure.
Or it might just be in my head. I was told of a Milwaukee legend by a fellow at Arts Performance Center, Silk on Water now, downtown years ago. Her name was Dirty Helen. I believe he stated that she was very active here in the Prohibition area and had quite the reputation.
Okay.
So hopefully you understand that, because I don't even really think there was a question in there.
Yeah, maybe that wasn't really a question, but okay. So first, like to clear up so the Performing Arts Center, I don't really know what the Performing Arts Center was, but apparently it's now been replaced by Silk on Water, which is Silk is a strip club, and that would be on Water Street. So that's what Silk on Water is.
Okay, gotcha. That makes a lot more sense when you clarify that.
Not that I know, but yeah, that's what that is.
But Gavin's underwear is hanging up in the rafters in there.
That's not me. No, I've never been to a Silk, but I'm aware of them. So the question, well, like I said, maybe it's not even really a question, but it mentions Dirty Helen. And so I have with me today this fancy book called Good Time Party Girl. And
I'm going to read the bottom part of it, The Notorious Life of Dirty Helen Cromwell.
Yeah.
So there's a whole book written on this.
Yeah. So Dirty Helen, or Helen Cromwell, actually wrote an autobiography, which she called Dirty Helen. And it had been out of print for a long time. But the fine folks at Feral House Press, they apparently they got the rights to it because they reprinted it. And they added a few notes in here, kind of like clarifying some things. But they basically left it as is. So Helen tells her story, and it's she's not shy.
Oh, really?
She is not shy. She is a call girl. She's very open about that. She has a very foul mouth, and there's that. And actually, so we're going to do something on the Patreon that I don't think we've done before, and I hope nobody gets really mad about this, but
we're gonna read an audio. We're gonna make it an audiobook.
No, we're not. No, we're not. I'm not gonna read extensively out of here, but no, because there's so much material here, and because I'm only halfway through the book, we're gonna make this a 2-part episode.
Oh, okay.
How's that?
That's perfect.
Yeah, people at the Patreon are like, I'm not paying for this. I'm only getting half an episode, but I'm sorry. Don't worry. I'll make it worthwhile for you. So the story here, the book starts out with, so starting at the beginning, when you write a book, you're going to really grab people's attention first before you really get back to the beginning. And she starts off with a story of herself, Dirty Helen, hanging out with Al Capone, which if anybody knows my feelings on Al Capone, I'm instantly like, oh no, here we go. So that right off the bat, I'm like, okay, all right, you're going to have to show me this one. But that's how she gets your attention, is by saying she's hanging out with, Al Capone and his boss, John Torrio, which, I'll get into that, why it may or may not have happened. But anyway, so she's born in Cicero, Indiana in 1886. Her family is just, a middle class or farming family. She's really not much of anybody. Her family's not much of anybody. Just a regular person. So she's growing up and, in a small town, she lives a pretty peaceful life. But then she starts getting interested in boys. And her family, especially her father, is kind of protective about who she likes or doesn't like. And she ends up really liking this one guy. And they start meeting secretly down by the river.
Ooh.
And the parents get scared. Parents are like, we do not approve of this guy. So please stop seeing him. But she keeps seeing him. So what do? They send her away to go live with her cousin for a little while. Because the cousin is a little bit better off. She's got better education. They think of her as a very proper girl. And they're like, you can live with your cousin for a little while. Your cousin will show you how to be a good girl and not.
And let me guess, the cousin is just a complete party girl.
Man, it's like you read the book. So she goes with the cousin for a while. And the cousin, like on the surface, like to her parents is very nice and everything. But yeah, she's going out to these hotel parties. And again, I don't know how accurate the book is, because some of the stuff is definitely exaggerated. But apparently she's the cousin is hooking up with different guys right and left. She's very strongly interested in this son of a department store owner, so he's well off. But they're not exclusive, so she's still, going around. And so Helen kind of learns from the cousin that, hey, a good way to get boys to like you and to spend money on you is to just sleep with all of them. So probably not the lesson her parents intended, but that's what she learns from her cousin. She ends up moving back home, and the guy who she was interested in, she ends up marrying. So that plan didn't actually work very well because she ends up marrying him anyway. His name is Phil. And Phil, actually, they move to Cincinnati, and he gets a pretty decent job. He owns a tavern. He gets to meet some of the nicer people in town, not nicer, but some of the wealthier people in town. And he moves up and he gets a better tavern. And they're happy. They got 2 kids. They're doing great. But then Phil meets the wealthiest, most successful prostitute in Cincinnati. And he falls madly in love with her. Her name is Florence. And Helen says, oh! And she hates it. She finds out. Like, at first, she doesn't know, but she figures it out.
Is she a prostitute at this point in time?
No.
Okay.
At this point, she's just a wife and a mother. Okay. Nothing at all like that. And so she goes, and she finds out about Florence. And then one time, Florence, actually calls the house and asks for Phil. And Helen answers the phone. And she goes, is this Florence? And Florence is like, oh, you know about me? And Helen's like, yeah, bitch. She doesn't say, yeah, bitch. But, she's like, yeah, I know who you are. And then things get really tense. And it gets to the point where Helen actually goes over to Florence's apartment, scratches up her face, steals her jewelry, and throws her down a flight of stairs.
Wow.
Yes. But Phil doesn't leave her. Phil stays with Florence anyway. Stays seeing Florence anyway. And Helen reaches this point where she's like, I think I should probably be divorcing Phil, because if he's just going to spend all his nights hanging out with this Florence, I mean, what's the point of being married? But here's the kicker. Although Helen was not raised Catholic, Phil was, so they got married in a Catholic church. And Phil says, I'm sorry, I'm Catholic. I will never grant you a divorce as long as I live. And I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. This is no disrespect to all our wonderful Catholic listeners. But yes, why is it not okay to get a divorce, but perfectly okay to be spending all your time with a prostitute?
And
I don't know.
And why would you want to stay married?
Well, just the way it's explained in here, and again, this doesn't tell Phil's side of the story. He might have a very different version. But according to Helen, it's strictly the Catholic thing that divorce is like the ultimate no-no. So, anything else you can ask for forgiveness, but divorce is big no. So, well, anyway, so Helen goes into business not for herself, but just kind of working in like a dress alteration store. She's very good at it. She gets very wealthy. She reaches a point where she's like, well, if Phil's going to do this and he's not going to divorce me, how about I do the same thing to Phil? So she starts going on dates with guys, and they're, buying her drinks, buying her dinner, taking her dancing. And, she catches on very quickly that they're spending all this money on her, not just because they like her company. And she's okay with that. she actually follows through with this. And it gets to the point where on one of these dates, she ends up with a very well-known tavern owner in town. And he takes her out, and they go to the same club where Phil and Florence are. That's an awkward moment. Like, oh, yeah, I'm here with the prostitute, and there's my wife with another bar owner in town who's like my friend because we're all buddy bar owners. So that's weird. But at this point, I mean, she's like, sorry, Phil. You know, it is what it is. Now, there's some strange things that happen to her. While she's working at this dress store, a guy comes in and asks for a dress for his wife. He has all the measurements and stuff, so he knows what size he needs. And he is willing to pay way too much for it. And in the book, this character's name is Eddie Mack, and Eddie Mack is not his real name. But
so she discloses she's going to call him Eddie Mack, but that's not really his
right,
name. Okay.
Right. There's times where she uses other names, but she's pretty clear about when she's using fake names. And Eddie Mack, turns out Eddie Mack is very wealthy. And he's very wealthy because he's a bank robber. So she ends up becoming really good friends with this guy. And actually in the book, in the notes, the editors think they know who Eddie Mack really was. And he's not a well-known name or anything, so I won't even bother with that. But they think they know who the real guy this is. Whether the stories are all true or not, at least the guy he's apparently based on. So they end up becoming really good friends. They never have a sexual relationship. They're just always friends. But he becomes so close that, like, he pays for her children to go to boarding school. They spend vacations together. They're very close. Until finally, Eddie Mack is killed.
Ooh.
Yes. Because you know what? Turns out being a bank robber is a dangerous business.
No, I thought you were going to say Phil killed him.
No,
not a big circle like that, huh?
No. In the book, he's run down by a car, and it's suspected of being a hit, like a mob hit. But in the true version, if it's the same guy that the editors think that it is, in the true version, he's shot. He's not run down. So there's a discrepancy there, and the years are a little bit off. So I don't know well enough that, you know, she's just fudging things in here or what. But either way, the point is like when he's killed, it's suspected that he's making all this money robbing banks and somebody isn't getting paid. So they're upset with him. So yeah, so she knows Eddie Mack. That doesn't go all that well. Her children she very rarely sees because they're in the boarding school, so she's out doing her own business. She moves to New York for a while and takes up residence in a hotel. She becomes friends with the hotel detective. And here's a history thing for people. I don't think this is still a thing. Maybe it is. Someone can correct me. But it used to be that like major hotels had a job called the hotel detective.
Okay.
And it was like the security detail for the place, and they would monitor things. And if you checked into the hotel and you had valuables on you, you'd put them in the hotel safe, and this guy would oversee the safe. So
I bet you that still exists in some very high-end hotels.
It probably does. I just, I go to the Best Western. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure the Best Western doesn't have that.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest, the Best Western is not even the best Western. It's like a mediocre Western. But so she becomes good friends with the house detective, the hotel detective, and he essentially becomes her pimp. So people will like check into the hotel, and if they're, wealthy, good gentlemen, guys who aren't going to rough her up or anything, he says, "Hey, I got somebody up on this floor that you should meet." And they end up working together for years, apparently. I think it's like 4 years they end up doing this.
So is this the first point where she really, truly crosses into prostitution?
Openly, yes.
Okay.
Because prior to that, she's going out on dates with guys and getting money that way.
Yeah, they're just spending money on her per se, not paying her for...
Right. And
okay.
so it's, I guess it depends how you define it. Because she was doing prostitution before, but it wasn't like she was like advertising it.
Mhm.
And now she's basically has a guy
Like,
advertising it. So, yeah, I don't know how much difference that makes, but it's definitely, she's not meeting guys anymore. Guys are just coming to her. Yeah. So that's going on. Really, the last major thing is she meets a guy who, at least in the book, he's called Bob. He's never given a last name, but he's called Bob. And Bob, now, so she's born in 1886. Now we're up to about 1918, which is before the halfway point in the book.
All right.
And he's a guy who's just gotten out of World War I. He got mustard gassed. He's about 10 years younger than her, but they hit it off immediately. And so he's like, Helen, marry me. And she's like, but you know what I do. And he goes, I know, but I love you. And she's like, I love you too. And so for a while, she actually gives it up. Not because he asked her to, but just because she really likes this Bob guy. And they do end up getting married, although she has to get married under a fake name. Because she's still technically married to Phil. Yeah. Even though they haven't been together for like 10 years at this point. Yeah. She's still on paper married to Phil. So she has to use a fake name to get married to Bob. And it's a kind of a stressful time because he got mustard gassed. And I don't know exactly, how that works. But apparently he has to regularly go in for treatments because his lungs are all messed up. And he does eventually die. So it's not the longest. They get married fairly quickly because they know right off the bat his time is limited. But he ends up living longer than they expect, and it's pretty happy, but then he dies. And, yeah, I don't know. I assume that's true that really happened, but, like, because his name's just Bob. He never has a last name. Like, there's really very little. It'd be very hard to verify that.
And they don't have any notes in there where they trace back, like, who he possibly could have been?
Not on that guy.
No, that's weird, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing, like, because she got married under the fake name, it would be hard to even find the marriage record. Now, I don't think it'd be impossible, because if the book is accurate, it does say that he died in Chicago, and it actually gives the day that he died. So I think it's possible. Now, the biggest hurdle is his name actually Bob? But if his name is actually Bob, I think you could figure out, who is about the right age named Bob who died on this day in Chicago. I think it could be done.
So did I miss it? Because you just said that he died in Chicago. So at some point how did they end up in Chicago? Did you say that?
No, but I should. Because this leads us to the last part we're going to talk about. This is what I'm going to end on.
Okay.
So they meet in New York because she's living in this hotel in New York.
Right.
But his family lives in Chicago, and the family is very well off. She doesn't even really know that, but she finds out they're very well off because his family owns this business where they import Oriental rugs, which, I'm not in the Oriental rug market, but apparently, that's big money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're doing very good, and all the people in Chicago who want Oriental rugs go through these people. So he's back in Chicago periodically. Like they'll go back and forth between New York and Chicago, and sometimes they'll go back to Indiana because that's like where her family is from. But when he's healthy enough to actually work, he's in Chicago.
Okay.
And so here's the thing. I'm not even gonna. I'm reading out of the book in case people don't know that. Actually went pretty smooth.
Yeah, it did.
Okay. So then he, through the business, his family knows Jim Colosimo, and I'm probably saying the name wrong, but anyway, they know him, Big Jim, Diamond Jim. He's got these different nicknames, and he's kind of like the head of the mob in Chicago.
Okay.
At this time, around 1920, and and they're good friends because. Oh, he's this wealthy gangster, and he wants Oriental rugs everywhere. So one day they're in Chicago, and they're like, "Hey, Helen, you want to go to have dinner with Big Jim?" And she's like, "Oh, heck yeah!" And Big Jim just got married to this showgirl named Dale Winter, and apparently Helen knew her in New York because they used to go bargain shopping together.
Okay.
I don't know. Again, I don't know if any of this is true, but that's what she says. And they so they go and they have dinner, and they're like, "Oh, Helen, oh, hey, it's been years." And so they become friends with Big Jim, who's then murdered 3 weeks later.
Okay.
And taking over after he's killed is John Torrio and Al Capone.
Okay.
So then she becomes friends with John Torrio and Al Capone. There's parts of this that I find suspicious. Now, her explanation is actually pretty good. In all fairness, it's pretty good. Most like Al Capone stories, like I think, are full of a lot of BS. And this one I think is definitely exaggerated, but I don't think it's impossible, because if it's true that her husband's family was in the Oriental rug business, I could believe that they know wealthy criminals.
Right.
That part doesn't seem like a stretch to me. So I could see that connection being legit. The part that's strange to me is when she meets Al Capone for the first time in the book. It's 1922.
Okay.
They're out to dinner. He's there. John Torrio's there. A couple other guys are there. And she's sitting next to Al. And they're talking. And she goes, "Oh, you're the famous Al Capone." Or sometimes people call you Al Brown and this and that. And they're laughing and they're joking and this and that. And the part that I take issue with is in 1922, he is not the famous Al Capone. He's Al Capone.
Right.
But he's not famous.
He hasn't done anything yet,
Right.
basically. He's just a guy.
Right. There's really no reason she should have any idea who he is. But she knows who he is and knows that he goes by Al Brown, which is like his fake name he uses on businesses. And like, that's the part I'm questioning. Like, that had they just met for dinner and then later on they go out and they see a band and she's like, "This band is great. Who is that?" And then John Torrio's like, "It's a new guy I got. His name is Louis Armstrong." And she's like, "Wow, he's amazing." Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, okay, so now you just met Al Capone and you're like best friends. Then you go to a club and you meet this brand new star, Louis Armstrong. I'm like, okay. I mean, she runs into a lot of people. Like she ends up with like a guy who owns a major lumber company in Canada, and just she's meeting a lot of, and granted, she's a high-end call girl, so that's not like out of the realm, but there's a lot of stuff that's just completely unverifiable, and I'm like, I don't know.
And it could be as simple like your Al Capone example.
Yeah.
That might not have been how the conversation actually went. She might have gone there and not had any idea who he was.
Right.
But by the time she wrote this, maybe she tried to jazz it up a little bit that, oh yeah, I knew who this famous guy was, even though at that point he wasn't really even famous.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that's kind of how I feel about it is I don't know if she met him or not, but I find it believable. Mm-hmm. I think that's certainly possible. Like I don't think that could be completely, it could be completely made up, but it could be real. But yeah, that's my general thought is she's writing this like after she is retired. So like, 40 years later. And yeah, she's going to puff up the Al Capone part of the story.
It, yeah.
So I don't think the version she tells is probably very close to the truth,
mm-hmm.
but there may be some truth in there.
Yeah, and like, what did you say that she goes and meets Louis Armstrong like immediately after dinner or something like that?
Yeah, because they go out to a club, and I will say, like, if she's making this up, she's pretty good at it, because I didn't do a lot of fact checking on right now I'm more focused on just reading the book, but I've checked a couple things. I'm like, is this even like believable? And it's true that Louis Armstrong did make his debut in the year at the club that they went. So it is true in 1922, the club that she allegedly went to is the club that he debuted at. So even if she's making it up, she at least knows the story.
She could be doing one of two things. It could have just been a dumb coincidence and it actually did happen. Or
Right.
two, she also knows how to use Google. And well, I guess Google didn't exist when she probably
Right.
wrote this book, but
Well, that's the thing. So the book originally came out in the 60s.
yeah.
And that's what impresses me. It's like, yeah, I can do an easy Google search. I'm like, oh, how did Louis Armstrong get his start? Da, 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 da. Like,
But
she's sitting like at home, basically retired. I don't know how easy it is to look some of that up.
Yeah.
I mean, but in her retirement, by the end of this, like, we didn't talk about it at all yet. But by the end of her life, she lives in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
So the first half, she doesn't live in Milwaukee. So none of this is relevant to the podcast. But it's getting there. There's even going to be an Appleton part of the story. But
Really?
yes,
Cool.
yeah. But yeah, like, I don't know, like, what the resources were. If it was as simple as going to the public library and being like, okay, I got to talk about meeting Louis Armstrong. Let me look up Louis Armstrong. I mean, maybe that's all she had to do. But I have to say that the stuff, it fits together in the timeline pretty well.
And I would assume, because
but she's like the prostitute Forrest Gump. So I don't know how true some of it is.
Yeah, I would say that, like, it's all very reasonable.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It seems like really, really strange that in that short of a period, such big things would happen.
Yeah.
To her. But,
Nothing impossible happens in this book. Like, everything in here is entirely possible. But
it's just for it to happen to one person.
For it to happen to one person seems unlikely. And as anybody who's, I mean, if you're willing to pay for the Patreon, you've probably listened to enough episodes where I'm always questioning stuff.
Yeah.
So, it could be 100% true, but it's just like, I want to see the facts, and I don't know. But it does make for a really great read. I'll say that. If nothing else, it's a great read. I'll summarize the second half next time. But yeah, if you want to hear stories about a lady going around meeting all kinds of high-class business owners, stockbrokers, living a wild life, and not being shy about it. Like, I keep my language pretty clean on here, but she does not. I mean, there's a lot of F-bombs in this book. So
I assume you were familiar with her before.
I had heard of her.
Okay, but she didn't really. Did you know anything about her? Or just basically knew the name.
I knew the name, and I knew that she was like a famous call girl. But that was about all I knew, because I don't know when this book came out, but
and I assume she's gone at this point, right?
Oh, she's very very gone.
Because she was probably really old when she wrote this book.
Yeah. Okay. So this book came out in 2019. So this book is still fairly new.
Like, but that's the reprint.
It's the reprint. It's the reprint. The original version came out in the 60s, but like I said, it was out of print. So I was aware of its existence, but to like get a copy, you'd pay like $100 or something. I'm like, that's not going to happen. So I didn't have a copy. And then, Feral House reprinted it. And like I said, I don't know how they got the rights to do it, but they talked to like her grandchildren and stuff. So they actually interviewed the family while putting the book together. So they put some effort into it.
Well, and how long is copyright?
Well, that's the part I'm not sure about.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long copyright is. I feel like it's longer than the 60s. Though.
It is longer than the 60s, but the thing of it is like, if I don't know who the original publisher was, but like if they don't exist, they're clearly not going to enforce their copyright.
Yeah, I suppose. If there's nobody to sue you for stealing the book, you can kind of almost do it.
Yeah, if you printed it in the 60s and then you went out of business.
And there's no like trace of you anywhere.
Yeah.
Then, yeah.
So, I don't know I assume that this Feral House is a very well-known publisher.
Sure, so
I'm sure they know what they're doing.
They're not doing anything under illegal or anything by doing it.
Right.
So
like I see it, and I wouldn't have even thought of reprinting it because I would have thought like, oh, that's might still be under copyright, but they know what they're doing. So if not, but yeah. But,
and you said you knew this book existed prior to this question.
I did.
Yeah,
I did because I have a very long Amazon wish list.
And it was on it?
Yes.
The $100 version was on it?
Yes, because, I've scaled this back significantly. But when I first started doing the Mafia stuff, like, I was in like 100, 200%. And so, like, when I found out that a book existed, I put it on the list. And then I read a lot of, like, boring academic books. So, like, if a book is mentioned in the footnotes, then the book gets added to the list. And, and periodically I'd go back and I'd look and I'd be like, oh, this book's only 99 cents today. And I'd pick it up. And that's kind of how my decision making goes. Because if I really want a book, I might go up to $20, but I'd rather get like the 99-cent one. But I've scaled that back considerably because at first I read everything. And then I quickly realized that that's too much. Mm-hmm. It's just too much. And so, like anything like New York, gone, deleted off the list. I don't care about New York anymore. So it's pretty much like Chicago and Milwaukee, but there isn't any Milwaukee. So,
And basically, isn't it too? I think we've discussed this previously that like a lot of the mafia stuff, you have to be picky on what you actually read about the mafia because a lot of mafia books published are just the same crap regurgitated over and over and over.
It absolutely is, yeah.
And you have to be kind of picky on what is actually practically usable or in what's just telling you the same story.
Absolutely.
Over and over
again.
I
know like last year, a new John Gotti book came out and John Gotti is like the biggest mob guy basically since Al Capone. So there's been book after book written about him. I didn't read the newest book because I don't read the New York books anymore, but based on my understanding, there's nothing new in it. It's like when you're the 20th book, you're not adding anything to the story anymore. Cool. So yeah, I cut out the New York stuff completely because it so rarely ties into anything that I do. So it's just not beneficial. Like Chicago, there's a significant overlap, so I still read Chicago stuff. But like my real focus now is just Wisconsin history because I find Wisconsin history, even not crime, just in general, tends to pay off more for the research than other mob stuff. Cool. Just putting it in a context,
Yeah. So, well, I think that was a good book find. And I think the writer of said question probably is getting much more of an answer than they would have ever expected to get from sending that question.
Yeah, so that summary there, that was the first 150 pages, and so the next time would be the second 150 pages summarized.
Which hopefully Gavin will have read by then.
Oh, yeah, I will. I will.
And then we'll hear her head to Milwaukee.
Yeah, and I can tell you just from like flipping through, she ends up in Milwaukee and she opens a tavern in Milwaukee, but she's also in Appleton for a while. So we get an Appleton and a Milwaukee piece in the second half.
Cool. All right, well, stay tuned for that. We'll wrap this one up unless you've got anything else for this that you want to add in.
No, not really. Just, stay tuned for the second half of the book. I think it's going to be good. And maybe if I do any fact checking, I'll give an update on that in the second half as well.
And maybe Gavin will let me use that book because I kind of would be interested to read it.
Ooh.
Maybe.
Ooh.
So I have to give it a try first to see. But
it's a pretty good page turner, honestly. Like it's well written. Yeah, it's actually pretty good.
Cool. All right, then. Well, as always, thank you all for your continued support of our podcast, and stay tuned for a new regular Milwaukee Mafia episode next week, and we'll be back with the Patreon in 2 weeks. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Milwaukee Mafia podcast. Join us next time for another look back at Wisconsin Mafia and true crime history.
Hey there, Milwaukee Mafia listeners. Thanks for tuning into the bonus episode from our Patreon archive. If you want to hear the latest and greatest content, head over to patreon.com/Milwaukee Mafia to join the Patreon today. Catch you on the other side.